right, we are streaming for our Wednesday night Bible class here at the Fulton Church of Christ. We are putting this out where it needs to be, and then we'll get started. We will be studying from Exodus 25 tonight, hopefully getting Exodus 25 and 26. That is the goal, or at least get partway into 26. We're entering into another part of Exodus, as we talked about a few weeks ago. We've sort of left the narrative for the most part, where we're talking about the story of Exodus, to where we are now talking about the we're now talking about the law, and we've talked about a little bit of the law, but more to the point now, we're talking about actually the covenant, or the tabernacle, excuse me. We're talking about the tabernacle and what that is involved with the tabernacle, and how they were to build that. And so tonight we're going to start looking at that in the next, at least this week and next week, and maybe a week after that, depending on how far we get. We're going to look at the tabernacle and look at what it is, or what God's plan was for the tabernacle, and what God's plan was to follow that the pattern God set forth. And that's what we're going to see tonight, is this pattern God lays forth for the Israelites in building the tabernacle and building the parts of the tabernacle, and what they were laid out for. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen. All right, we are, as I said, in Exodus 25. As we have talked last week about, God has ratified the covenant, or the people have ratified the covenant. They've agreed to be God's people. They've agreed to follow God's command and to follow his law as he has called them to. And so now God has called Moses back up on the mountain. Remember, he told Moses, Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the 70 elders to come partway on the mountain and to share the feast. Then after that, Moses and Joshua went up the mountain. Joshua went partway up the mountain, and Moses went the rest of the way. And so Moses, this is the 40 days that Moses is up on the mountain that this occurs. And Moses is writing down what God told him and what God revealed for what they were to do. So we start in verse 1 here to look at this, at what is happening, what God lays out for Moses. Now, the first 9 verses, God's going to lay out how the Israelites are to gather the supplies, what they are to do to build this tabernacle for him. Notice the Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the people of Israel so that they may take from me a contribution. From every man whose heart moves him, you shall receive the contribution from me. And this is the contributions you shall receive from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue and purple and scarlet yarns, and fine twine linen, goat's hair, tan ram skins, goat skins, Acadia wood, oil for the lamp, spices for the anointing oil and for the fragrant incense, onyx stones and stones for setting, for the ephod and for the breastpiece, and let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell in their midst. Exactly as I show you concerning the pattern of the tabernacle and of its furniture, so you shall make it." So God comes to Moses here, and I want to notice just a few things real quickly about this contribution. Notice first in verse 2, this is not the tithe. This is not a commanded compulsory giving, but God says he wants you to take a contribution from every man whose heart moves him. Some translations actually put who has a free will to give this, a free heart. This is a contribution that was not required, not forced. They didn't have a tax or tithe. This was a free will offering. You were to give what you wanted to give. And then God says, "This is what I want you to give to me." He wants gold, silver, and bronze. Those are the metals. As far as the fabric and such, he lists blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, blue, purple, scarlet thread, and fine twine linen. Then he asked for goat's hair, ram skin, goat skins, acacia wood, oil for the lamp, spices, for the anointing oil, for the fragrant incense, onyx stones. These were black stones that were precious. There were also other stones he's going to give them. He's going to give them 12 different stones there to collect. And there's going to be for the ephod and for the breastpiece. And then God says, and let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell in their midst. So what God is doing here is God lays out this contribution for them. Now, the interesting about this is that God does, one, this is free will. They have the opportunity to give or not give. Number two, this is a valuable gift. The metals that were given were gold, silver, and bronze. These were not cheap metals. These were not cheap things. The yarns he gave, the scarlet, the purple, the blue, those were precious yarns. They were expensive fabric. And again, you got to remember, in their time, you basically had brown and white was what you typically wore. Not really a white, but more of a dark white or off white, but tan and brown and that off-white were about the only colors you could get readily, easily, because any of the colors you had to dye it, and people didn't have a lot of money to dye these linens in, dye this fabric in, and so to have a colored yarn and have a colored strand was a very expensive gift. Now, some people look at this and say, well, how did the Israelites afford this? They were a slave people who've just been on the run, and now God's demanding, or God's asking for these things. Well, how does he expect these people to get it? Well, a lot of people believe that what happens, they get this probably from a few ways. Number one, they got this because you remember when they leave Egypt, God told them to ask their neighbors for their jewelry and ask their neighbors for things to help them travel. Well, the things they would have gotten from the Egyptians would have been these very things. It would have been these things that God is asking for. Secondly, you remember they've already fought the Amalekites. They already had the Amalekites that came and fought them. And again, they defeated the Amalekites. When you defeat a people, you get the loot, you get the spoils of war. So that was another way they probably got some of these. The third way they got this is the area they're camping in. There is a major trade route that goes through, that heads down into Egypt, that goes through the Sinai Peninsula. And so anything they didn't have, as far as these precious stones and gold and silver and such, they could trade for it. And so all these things were things the Israelites could get and they could have. They probably did have already. And so God wants these things. God asked for these things for a specific reason. Now, you'll notice God says, make me a sanctuary. And the idea of sanctuary is a dwelling place, a place to be among you, to dwell in your midst. And God says, let me make a place where I will be with you. And we're going to see that when this tabernacle was built, when this tabernacle travels, and that's the thing about the tabernacle. This tabernacle was built where it can be very easily tore down, put up, and moved. There was nothing major to it. Again, nothing, when I mean major, no major construction. It was easily put up and torn down. It's a very portable system. Very interesting that's how God lays it out. You know, verse 9, we talk about this in our Wednesday night devotional. If you watch that video, that God says, exactly as I show you concerning the pattern of the tabernacle, exactly as I show you, and make its furniture, so you shall make it. God says, I'm going to reveal to you how you're going to make it. Now, again, how this happens, we don't know. There have been a lot of different ideas throughout the Bible scholarship of what God exactly does here. Some think that maybe God gave Moses a blueprint, some kind of paper, something that was almost like a blueprint. Some believe that God showed Moses an image of this, or some believe God revealed it in a vision. Some believe it didn't just appear to Moses, but also to the craftsmen. We'll see as we get later on. He's going to name some craftsmen toward the end of this book who are going to be a part of the people who's going to build this, who are able to do what God tells them to do. And some people think, well, God revealed to them, and it's hinted to that God reveals to them what he wants. But exactly how this works, we don't know. But what we do know is God shows them what he wants them to do. And again, another interpretation is that possibly God shows them some of the things of heaven that these things are modeled after. Because you remember, the Hebrew writer will tell us that the things of the tabernacle are a shadow of things in heaven. They're a copy of them, and an imperfect copy. So possibly God shows them the heavenly part of this, and then they take it into the physical part as best they can. But exactly how this works, we don't. But we do know that God told them very specifically, and we're going to see that very specifically how to build it, how to create it, and how to do it. And then He would set up. They'd have this tabernacle. They'd have this sanctuary where He would dwell among them. This is an artist rendition, and tonight we're going to look at a lot of pictures. Well, the next few weeks we're going to look at a lot of pictures, because again, this I told you in the devotional. If you watch that, these chapters we're in, they get very heavily bogged down because there's a lot of detail, and if you're not careful, you don't you get wrapped up in it. You overlook some of that detail, don't listen to it as well. But sometimes it helps to see a picture. But this is what the tabernacle, when it's finished, would look like. You'll notice that there is a part. Let me find my clicker here. Okay. Now we'll briefly go through this, then we'll talk. Let's go to the next slide. I think the next slide is going to label this out a little more. You see, this is how this was designed to lay out. Down here, you'll notice that it had a certain direction. This gate, the opening gate, was always be pointing to the east. The Holy of Holies was always to the west. Then there was a north side and a south side, and God's going to tell the tribes where they camp, and each tribe had a certain spot around this tabernacle. There is the inner court and outer court. The outer court is what's surrounded by this fence. There's the bronze altar. We'll talk about that, or brazen altar. That's the offer of burnt offerings. Then you had the laver. I forget exactly what it's called. If it had no name, I think the temple calls it the brass sea. Is where the water was to be stored. Then inside the temple, inside the tabernacle, you were to have two places. You had the holy place and the holy place, or the Holy of Holies. Inside this, you had the candlestick, the table of showbread, and the golden and the incense, the altar of incense. Sorry. Then in the Holy of Holies, you had the Ark of the Covenant. Now, what we're going to see tonight, if we get that far, is God's going to tell about how to make the Ark of the Covenant and the seat that sits upon it. He's going to talk about the candlestick and the table of showbread. He's going to talk about the veil that goes in between these two, and the covering that goes over this, and then the wall, what they're to be made of it. And again, that's if we get through 26. And again, I don't, the hang up the saying we're not going to get through 26 is not necessarily the amount of detail, but it get through the verses, because there's some very deep verses and very intricate verses. When I mean deep, I mean very intricate details about these things. And again, everything we study, I've got some pictures or drawings of what people think this would have looked like, and I think that will help you out to appreciate what God sets forth. So let's go on to our first piece of the altar, or our first piece of tabernacle. Verse 10, they shall make an ark of Acadia wood. 2 cubits and a half shall be its length, and a cubit and a half its breadth, and a cubit and a half its height. You shall overlay it with pure gold, inside and outside. You shall overlay it. You shall make on it a molding of gold around it. You shall cast 4 rings of gold on it, for it, and put them on its 4 feet. 2 rings on the one side of it, and 2 rings on the other side of it. You shall make poles of Acadia wood, and overlay them with gold. And you shall put the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to carry the ark by them. The poles shall remain in the rings of the ark. They shall not be taken from it. And you shall put into the ark the testimony that I shall give you. Now, let's stop right here, because he's going to tell about building the top of this ark later. The ark here is a different word in the Greek, in Hebrew, excuse me. This is not the same ark that is used in Genesis 6. This is more the ark here. Some translations say ark. Probably a better translation would be chest. You're to make a chest of wood. And this chest is to be of Acadia wood. Now, a lot of this is Acacia wood. Acacia wood is a light, very sturdy wood, but it was lightweight. Therefore, it was able to take this. And then you notice the other thing about this, you're going to see where the gold comes in for the offering is that the Israelites would take the gold from all that they collected, and they were to overlay pure gold. They were overlay this thing with gold. And what we're going to see is everything inside the tabernacle, especially inside the tabernacle, close to the Holy of Holy place, is going to be of gold. And then as you go forth, you go further away, you're going to see less valuable materials used, because the idea is that the closer you got to the interior, the more gold you wanted, because that's most precious. And that was to be the things that were closest to God, closest to where God resides. So you're going to build this chest of wood. You're going to overlay it in gold. You're going to make the roll around the molding of it for the lid to sit on. Then you're going to put these 4 rings on its feet. We most of us know what that's for, because that's going to be how they carry this thing. And he's going to put these poles inside of it, and these poles are going to be overlaid with gold. And these poles are to be always in the ark for it to be carried and be transported from place to place. And that's how you're supposed to do it. And again, remember, the ark is supposed to be is so holy and is so precious that it wasn't even supposed to be touched. The only way you're supposed to carry it is by those poles, and carrying it by the priests on those poles. There are certain priests are supposed to carry it. And then verse 16, we find out the first item that goes into this ark. There are a few items we'll see as time goes on that God's going to tell them, you take this and put it in the ark. Take that and put it in the ark. The first is a testimony. God's going to say, take the stone tablets that he's going to give. Again, notice that I shall give you. I haven't given them yet. But the ones you're going to receive, I want you to put them in the ark. And this is going to be a memorial for what God has done for them. From there, he talks about the second part, the top of the ark. Now, notice verse 17, you shall make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2 cubits and a half shall be its length, and a cubit and a half its breadth. Let's stop right here, because I did skip that. You remember, a cubit is about 18 inches. Typically, 18 inches is the point from the tallest finger on your hand, the middle finger, to an elbow. On a typical man, that's 18 inches. That was their way of measuring. So here you have 2 cubits is 18 and 18. That's 36. So 36 plus 9, that's can't get my math right. Around 4 foot long is what this thing's, how long this tabernacle is going to be. And then a cubit and a half, going to be about 2 foot, going to be about 4 foot by 2 foot ark chest. And then this lid is going to be the same dimensions. Then you notice verse 18. You shall make 2 cherubim of gold, of hammered work shall you make them, of the 2 ends of the mercy seat. Make 1 cherub on one end and 1 cherub on the other end. Of one piece with the mercy seat shall you make the cherub on each end, the cherubim on its 2 ends. The cherubim shall spread out their wings above, overshadowing the mercy seat with their wings. Their faces one to another. Toward the mercy seat shall the faces of the cherubim be. And you shall put the mercy seat on top of the ark, and in the ark you shall put the testimony that I shall give you. There I will meet with you, and from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim that are on the ark of testimony, I will speak with you about all that I will give you in commandment for the people of Israel. So basically, God commands them. Again, this is a representation of what this will look like. He tells them to build an ark. Now, on top, he's there to put 2 cherubim. Exactly what cherubim are, we don't know, or how they looked, how they would have appeared. The cherubim have been destroyed since then. Cherubim were a type of angel. Some have said that the cherubim, from what we read in the scriptures, cherubim is not the Cupid, lovey-dovey angel we see from the Renaissance period, but more the ancient angel of a human face with the ferocity of a lion, maybe a sphinx. Some people have said that the sphinx is close to what the cherubim would have looked like. And either way, you have these 2 beings that are to face one another, and they have these outstretched wings. And this is all to be gold and all one piece. And God says, I'll reside here. Now, what we find out here, a very interesting thing, is that apparently when God speaks to Moses after this point, Moses is able to enter the most holy place. Typically, only the high priest can enter there once a year, the Day of Atonement. But apparently, Moses came in there more, because when you go back, and I say that to go back between verse 22, where God says, there I will meet with you. And from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim that are on the ark of the testimony, I will speak with you. So God says he's going to meet Moses there on the top of the ark, and on top of the mercy seat. And so this is the idea. Now the idea here is that what this basically does is this creates a throne for God. This is where God says, I will sit and I will rule Israel. I will be here. Now, again, the Israelites take this too far in that they think that if the ark is present, then God's present. If the ark's not present, God's not there. This is why we see in 1 Samuel when Eli's two sons bring the ark into war. They bring it into a fight because they think God's presence is there, because God is there, and they're defeated. The Philistines steal the ark, and they think they can outdo the ark. But then the ark, when they take it into their god Dagon, you remember that story? It falls down before God's ark 2 or 3 times. They put on an ark, they put it on a cart, and they say, okay, we'll see if this is really from God. If it goes to the Israelites when nobody got it, then we know that their God is real. If it doesn't, we know it's just superstition, it's just bad luck. Well, the cart, if you know the story, goes back to Israel, and therefore they are able to save the ark. The ark plays a very important role. The ark is one of the first things that leads Israel out. When the Israelites travel, the ark is in the front. When the Israelites go to war, the ark is present, and it symbolizes God's presence with the people. And again, this some of the people took it a little too far, but this is a way of God showing the people or being with the people. The ark, when the 12 spies go in and they give the bad the bad report, and the people listen to them, and they refuse to go, and God condemns them to the wilderness. Part of Israel goes north to the promised land to try to attack them anyway to make up for their unfaithfulness. And it says that Moses and the ark stay in the camp, and the people are destroyed. And then when the ark goes into battle, the people are victorious. When the people enter the Canaan land, the very first thing that comes to the river Jordan is the ark. As soon as the priests carrying the ark step into the water of Jordan, the water parts and rolls back, and people are able to pass by on dry ground. So the ark is a very important, very key feature of the ark, of the tabernacle. And so I think it's very fitting that it's the first piece that God tells them how to make. And God lays us out what the cherubim are to look like, what the tops to look like, what's the bottom to look like, what's supposed to be in this thing. And so it's very peculiar about how they build this ark. From there, we go to the second item, and it is that you should make a table of Acacia wood. 2 cubits shall be its length, a cubit its breadth, and a cubit and a half its height. You shall overlay it with pure gold and make a molding of gold around it. And you shall make a rim around it, a handbreadth wide, and a molding of gold around the rim. And you shall make for it 4 rings of gold, and fasten the rings to the 4 corners of its 4 legs. Close to the frame, the rings shall lie as holders for the poles to carry the table. You shall make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold, and the table shall be carried with these. And you shall make its plates and dishes for incense, and its flagons and bowls, which are to pour drink offerings. You shall make them of pure gold, and you shall set the bread of presence on the table before me regularly. So the next item God makes is this table, the table of showbread. And this table is, again, to be built of a certain dimension. It's going to be about 3 foot by 18 inches, and then about 2 feet tall. So it is to be set there. And then on this table is to be these vessels. Again, notice the golden rings. This is how the people are going to carry this table. The rings with the golden poles through them. On this table, this is what they're going to do the drink offering. They're going to do I forgot the other offering it just told us. For incense offering, they're going to have some incense here. They're going to have incense here, but they're going to be offered on the altar of incense. And then it also talks about these 12 loaves of bread. These 12 loaves my mind's not working tonight. The bread of the presence. What's going to happen is that every week they're going to put in 12 loaves. And again, this is a representation of what these loaves were. Later we'll find out more about these loaves. But they're 12 loaves of bread that were to be brought in and be put on this table. Now 12 is significant because this 12 represents the 12 tribes. The 12 tribes are each represented by this bread, and there'll be an altar. They're going to be in the tabernacle. They're going to be before the presence of God. They're going to be before God's presence. So God will remember them. God will call them to mind. And then at the end of every week, on I think it's a Sabbath day. Well, I may be wrong. We'll find out about this later. They're to take the 12 loaves of bread out and put 12 more loaves in. Now, a lot of people think that this is probably unleavened bread that was put here. I forget exactly what it is. We'll see later when he talks more about it. But anyway, after this bread has been sitting here for a week, the priests are to eat the bread. This was their meal for the next few days. And the priests were the only ones who are supposed to eat this. Later on, we'll find, I think David, when he's on the run from Solomon, or from the run, not Solomon, on the run from Saul, will go to one of these goes to the tabernacle and eat the bread that he's not supposed to eat. But we'll talk about that, like I said, later when we get there. But this is the second item. This was to be in the tabernacle, in the holy place of tabernacle. The ark was in the most holy place. This was out in the other part of the holy place. This, along with two more items. One of those items, the altar of incense. We won't see that until chapter 30. The other item that's out there with it is the golden lampstand. So let's talk about that lampstand. You shall make a lampstand of pure gold. The lampstand shall be made of hammered work. Its base, its stem, and its cups, and its calyxes, and its flowers shall be of one piece with it. And there shall be 6 branches going out of the sides, 3 branches of the lampstand out of one side of it, and 3 branches of the lampstand out of the other side of it. 3 cups made like almond blossoms, each with the calyx and flower on one branch, and 3 cups made like almond blossoms, each with a calyx and flower on the other branch. So for the 6 branches going out of the lampstand. And on the lampstand itself, there shall be 4 cups made like almond blossoms with their calyxes and flowers, and a calyx of one piece under it, with it under each pair of the 6 branches going out from the lampstand. So their calyxes and their branches shall be of one piece with it, and the whole of it a single piece of hammered work of pure gold. You shall make 7 lamps for it. And the lamp shall be set up so as to give light on the place in front of it. Its tongs and their tray shall be of pure gold. It shall be made with all these utensils out of a talent of pure gold. And see that you make them after the pattern for which you have been shown, or which is being shown you on the mountain. So notice he makes this lamp. Again, this is about the best lamp I can find. This is what the lamp would they think the lamp would look like in the temple. You'll notice the gold wall behind it. However, for the tabernacle, it's basically the same thing. You'll notice it has 7 candles. This image of the lampstand, golden lampstand, has sort of become the image of Jewish religion. This is called a menorah. You talk about Hanukkah. They light the menorah. This is what this was a representation of, this candle. Now, the interesting about this candlestick is these cups. It's not a candlestick like we think about it. It's more of a lampstand. Some people call it a candlestick, a candlestand. But it has bowls on top of it. Those top parts are bowls full of oil. And you light the oil. It's not like the candles we have. So the priests were to fill these up every so often. And the interesting thing about this is the only light source in the tabernacle. There's no light source in the most holy place, and this is the only light source in the holy place. So when the priest comes in to do his work, this is how he gets his light, and we'll see why this is important in just a minute, because we get chapter 26. Chapter 26 is going to tell us about what is over this complex. One other thing to notice. Let's go back here real quick. Notice this about the first few things: the lid of the ark, the utensils for the table, the utensils for the lampstand, and the lampstand itself is all to be pure gold. Everything that can be made pure gold will be pure gold. The only things not pure gold are the ark, the chest, and the table, and they're to be overlaid with gold. Again, because you can't make a table that will stand out of gold. You'll notice here it talks about you make these things out of a talent of pure gold. That's 75 pounds of gold. And again, Moses is told here, make them after the pattern that you've seen. Now, what's interesting about this is something else is interesting about verse 9 and verse 40 is verse 9, he talks about the pattern you shall see, what you shall see later on, implying in the future. Here, you see which is being shown you, more present tense, past tense idea. So apparently, as God is telling Moses the details of how to make these things, God is revealing to him what this is to look like. So I've often thought about that, and that's why I like to include pictures, because it's a whole lot easier to understand how to build something like this if you can see it, if you can see a representation of it. And so this is what Moses does. And so God lays out chapter 25, the insides, beginning parts of the tabernacle. Again, this is just beginning. He's going to talk about this more. This is going to be all the way from chapter 25 to chapter 32. In chapter 26, we get to the next part. And I'll go ahead and tell you, bear with me. Chapter 26 is a lot of reading, but we're going to have to, but I want you to see this to get an idea of what this tabernacle is to look like. He says, moreover, you shall make the tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twined linen and blue and purple and scarlet yarns. You shall make them with cherubim skillfully worked into them. The length of each curtain shall be 28 cubits, and the breadth of each curtain 4 cubits. For all curtains shall be the same size. 5 curtains shall be coupled to one another, and the other 5 curtains shall be coupled to one another. And you shall make loops of blue on the edge of the outermost curtain in the first set. Likewise, you shall make loops on the edge of the outermost curtain of the second set. 50 loops you shall make on the one curtain, and 50 loops you shall make on the edge of this curtain that is in the second set. The loops shall be opposite of one another. And you shall make 50 clasps of gold and couple the curtains one to the other with clasps, so that the tabernacle may be a single whole. You shall also make curtains of goat's hair for a tent over the tabernacle. 11 curtains you shall make. The length of each curtain shall be 30 cubits, and the breadth of each 4 cubits. 11 curtains shall be the same size. You shall couple 5 curtains by themselves and 6 curtains by themselves. And the 6 curtains you shall double over at the front of the tent. You shall make 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that is outermost in one set, and 50 loops on the edge of the curtain that is outermost in the second set. So this is what's going to happen. This is another picture of the tabernacle. What we're talking about is right here, underneath this right here, and into this right here is the idea of these curtains. Now, the first curtain is supposed to be linen. It's going to be a linen that is made of this purple, the scarlet, and blue, the very fine things, and cherubim are to be made in it. We're going to see in a minute. There's a question about what order these things go in or where these things hang. But we're going to see how this works. The cherubim is actually the covering with the cherubim is a covering with
I'm getting your picture.
Okay, sorry. I had a little hiccup there. The curtain, the covering of the purple and scarlet linen, it was to go over the outer edge of this. And when you look at the actual measurements of the tabernacle, this curtain was about a foot short, or cubit short, on each side. So this curtain wouldn't go all the way down to the ground, or this covering. So this covering was to cover the top and the sides of the tabernacle. Then they were going to bring this other curtain or covering of goat hair that was to cover it, and then it would go all the way down to the ground. And not only that, it would be made where they would roll it back from the front, and that's where it talks about. Let me go back to a verse here. Where it talks about on the 6th curtain. I want to explain this because I know this sort of threw me off when I read it. Maybe it's here. Yeah, the 6th curtain you should double over right here in verse 9. 6 curtains you shall double over at the front of the tent. The idea there is the 6th curtain was made to be a door. It was to be rolled back. And that double over means basically let it fall and then fold it back on itself to where it creates an opening for this door to go in. And so this was the entrance to the tabernacle. From there, we get to the next covering where he continued. Well, this is actually continuing the goat skin. He says, you shall make 50 clasps of bronze and put the clasps into the loops and couple the tent together that it may be a single whole. And the part that remains of the curtains of the tent, the half curtain that remains shall hang over the back of the tabernacle, and the extra that remains in the length of the curtains and the cubit on the one side and the cubit on the other side shall hang over the sides of the tabernacle on this side and that side to cover it. And you shall make for the tent a covering of 10 ram skins and a covering of goat skins on top. So you notice this goat hair covering is going on top of this. It's to go down all the way to the sides to cover the front. But you'll notice here in verse 11, in verse earlier in the purple and linen covering, the golden the clasps that were to hold these curtains together would be gold, because they were to be the roof. That was going to create the roof of this tabernacle. And so therefore they were near the presence of God. So they had to be gold. And this is what I meant earlier, by the way, you step away from this tabernacle, the further you get out from the middle, the less precious materials that are used. Because here you notice the goat skins in verse 11, they're not golden clasp, but they're bronze, they're brass, or copper. That word bronze can be any of those three in the Hebrew. So it's a lesser metal that is used to clasp these together. And then you notice verse 14, there's another covering, and there's some debate about this. These two here, there's some ways, some wiggle room in the translation, the Hebrew words, of whether or not this is describing bags that carried the tabernacle, or if these were actual coverings that went over top of it. Most people think these are actually coverings that went on top of it. And these coverings were a tan ram skin. First one was tan ram skin. The reason they would use a tan ram skin is because a tan ram skin is more waterproof than a goat skin is, and so so that tan ram would be more water resistant for when the rain came and storms came. The other was, notice it says, this translation, the ESV says, a covering of goat skins. That covering of goat skins uses a word that is not very clear in the Hebrew language, not really clear what it is. There's a variety of things it could be. The King James calls it badger skins. Some translations call it porpoise skins. Some translations call it sea cow skins. The idea is it's some kind of skin that was even more waterproof. And some people think that that actually is going to be, like, say, the sea cow, forgot what they're called really, sort of like the manta ray, but or the mantas, but they're not manta ray. Oh my, I forgot. Anyway, if you know, most in Florida, the sea cow, it's a big animal that lives in the water. They think that there's a type of those that live in the Nile. That's what I'm trying to get at, or the Red Sea. And they think they would have used their skins to cover this, creating an even more waterproof covering. But again, if this is a covering or a bag, there's some debate, but this is just how detailed and how intricate God is in this whole setup. And so this is the tabernacle as God has set it up, and God has laid this out for them as how they're to put it together, put these on top of it. Again, we're still got a lot more to go. Let me see what verse we're at. I think we're going to stop right there tonight. I really hope to get all the way through 26, but we're not going to. We got about halfway through. Next, we're going to talk about the walls. It's very interesting, the walls that are built, but it's very intricate, again, verses. And I just don't want to wear us out of reading more about this. So for tonight, I apologize for sort of not being aware of where to stop exactly, but that's where we're going to stop. We've got the ark built. We've seen how the pattern of the ark. We've seen the pattern of the table of showbread, the pattern of the candlestick, and now we've seen the pattern for the linen cloth that goes over it, the linen covering goes over this tabernacle, and then we've seen the goat skins, the ram skins, and the other skins that go on top of this to protect it. And again, what's interesting about those last two, the ram skins and the other goat skin, sea cow skin, whatever they are, is that we're not given details about them. We're not told about how they're made. So again, that leads some people to think that they're not as precious, not as holy as the others are, because they're not as close to the tabernacle as the others were. But again, as I said in the devotional, the major thing we can learn about this is just how precise God is. God says, I'm going to show you this. I'm going to reveal this to you. And when I reveal this to you, this is how you're going to build the ark. This is how you're going to build the tabernacle. I want you to do exactly as I show you, exactly as I tell you. And one of the things we're going to see as we get into the rest of Exodus is about God telling us how to build the tabernacle, or telling Israel how to build the tabernacle, and then the Israelites building the tabernacle. Chapter 25, like I said, about chapter 30, 31 is God's instruction for the tabernacle. Then about chapter 34 through chapter 38, I believe, is basically a retelling of chapters 25 and following, in that they do it exactly as God said do it. So we're going to be able to move a bit quicker once we get there. And then we see at the end of the book of Exodus, God approving the tabernacle and coming and dwelling on it. But it's very important that and I say all that says very important that they build it exactly as God told them to. They lay it out and do exactly according to God's pattern. God has laid out a certain idea. God's laid out a certain thing to do, and God expects them to do it. And as a center devotion, the same idea God wants us. God lays out exactly what he wants us to do and how he wants us to live and how he wants us to obey him. That's where we can know what we believe and what we say and what we do is according to God's will, is that we do what he says. And if we do what he says, just as the Israelites were approved for what they did, we'll be approved for what we did. Again, thank you for being here tonight. Remember Saturday morning, the clocks spring forward. So remember to set your clocks forward an hour. Remember Sunday morning, we'll have our service at 10 a.m. We'll be both on Facebook and YouTube at that time as well. If you can't be in person, we hope to see you there. But again, for tonight, that's all that we have. Appreciate your attention. Next week, we'll continue talking about this building and tabernacle, and we'll talk about chapter 26 and get into chapter 27. But for tonight, we're going to stop right there. Again, I appreciate your attendance, appreciate you being here, and we look forward to seeing you all again